Teri. It's so good to have you on the Culture Podcast, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Marlon. I'm
Um,
quite excited.
I am very excited as well. And of course, this year our theme is all about elevate. And there's so many aspects of when we think about elevate. And I know when I spoke to you a little bit earlier, one of the areas that you were very passionate about was really about how do you begin to elevate your perspective. So I'm hoping that today we can unpack a little bit more what it means to elevate your perspective. We know that elevate means to go to the next level, to go to the next dimension, going up. And previously, when I was speaking to Christine, we were talking about how not everybody will go with you when you elevate. It's important to know that who is with you when you're going up. So, yeah, I'm really just kind of interested to hear a little bit more about your thinking and what does it mean for you when we're talking about elevate your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for that, Marlon. Yeah, I think I've been really immersed in the community over the last couple of weeks, and being on this journey of elevating my perspective. I think just seeing things from a different side of life, a different situation, really changes your perspective.
Yeah.
And I think you having the responsibility to do it or change it in a positive way, it takes a lot, specifically when you're challenged with daily, like challenges. But I think once you got your flow, it really helps.
Yeah.
You see things differently, you feel differently. Yeah, I think just in perspective, elevating perspective for me means changing the way you see things, and that influencing your actions. So if you see things differently, you act differently, you do things differently. So yeah.
I like that. So what you're saying is that when you want to elevate your perspective, it starts with the way you think.
Yeah.
Start with the way you see things.
100%.
And it's out of that your actions will then match and follow that. So, one of my favorite writers is a guy by the name of Paul. And I absolutely love Paul. And he says, do not conform to the pattern of the world. He says, don't conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. In other words, if you can renew your mind, then that changes your perspective. And I was just wondering, I know you've been traveling quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. Maybe you want to share a little bit about some of the communities that you were in, but also how, because some of the communities you've never been to, and how by going into these communities, how your perspective has changed about what is possible in those communities. Maybe you want to share just a little bit about that.
So I think the first trip we did Marikana, and of course, there's big history behind Marikana. And I think people just perceive it a certain way, but me being there and, like I said, immersed in that community, there's very limited opportunities for young people. And I think we just assume, that this is what young people are going to do, or this is what they want to do. But being there, there's actually young people that wants to start their own business, that wants to unlock industry in that community. And they believe that they're the future of Marikana and its economy. I think for Zwede, it's also very different. I think each community challenges are similar. Unemployment, crimes are high, but the young people, their minds, they think very differently. So I think you have to actually be there. Like I said, immersed in it. You have to experience it, because you just have this assumption that you go on by. But once you're there, you experience things differently.
But it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, just to, sometimes we have assumptions about something or some place or someone.
Yeah.
And it's only once you immerse yourself or engage with a community or with a person or with a situation that your perspective can change. And I wonder how often don't we, in our own lives, we think that we cannot build a future or we cannot achieve certain goals or achieve certain ambitions largely built on our assumptions without really giving it time to immerse ourselves in it so that our perspectives can change. And I find that kind of very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, for me, being a young female in leadership, I think that's also in itself that the whole dynamic around that it's quite significant. I think when young people, especially in these communities, there's so often these organizations and people coming into the communities offering certain opportunities, and there's a certain look.
Yes.
You know, it's senior people, first of all. It's
Yes.
someone, either a male.
Yes.
But I think it was very different seeing me come into the community and offering, or at least sharing my expertise and sharing RLabs with them. I think that really changed their perspective. I could see their body language change, and even the young ladies, I could see that their eyes are lit up. And they're like, oh wow, she's young, she's a female, she's speaking to men.
Yes.
I mean, there's cultural barriers as well. So I think, I think definitely we just assume that, you know, some people, like the communities, also want to receive certain messaging from certain people. And just breaking down that stereotypes, going in and being different.
But that's exactly it. Stereotypes are defined by the patterns of the world. Coming back to my friend Paul, right? Where Paul says you don't have to conform to the patterns, but you can be transformed. And your transformation comes by the renewal of the mind. So it means that if you can actively reshape the way you think, then you can actively reshape what you do. And I wonder if you can maybe think of an example where your perspective on something personally was where you thought, you know what, this is the way it is, and the minute you begin to change your way of looking at it, that you were able to either do something that you haven't done before, or were able to achieve something that you never thought would be possible. Because I'm sure for a lot of those that are listening or watching, it's very important for them to understand that elevating my perspective means that I'm really willing to rethink and reimagine what the world told me is possible. And I'm willing to elevate my way of thinking in order to go and achieve the things that used to be impossible. So I don't know if you can maybe use an example or something.
Just again, being on this journey for the last 2 weeks, had lots of revelations, and I think maybe just example, being done with school. Like before my journey started with RLabs, I had this perception, or you know, like you needed finance to go and study further.
Yes.
And at the time, my father was not able to send me to go study. And so I think just in society, my mind was like, oh, I'm not going to amount to much because, you know, you need to go to university and you need to attain a certain qualification. But lo and behold, I joined RLabs, and I mean, I've acquired skills. I mean, robotics.
Yes.
People like pay so much money for it. And again, it was just a perception that I had, like, this is what you need to attain in order to be something one day. And I'm basically living my dream.
I love that. So it's literally going counterculture.
Yes.
Right? The world tells you, in order to achieve success, these are the things that you have to do to achieve success. But going counterculture is like, okay, I'm not always going to go just with what the world tells me or predicts or prescribe, but I'm willing to elevate my perspective on things, because if I elevate my perspective, I elevate my possibilities. New possibilities comes out when you can look at the world differently. And I think that's for a lot of young people that's, you know, have got this dream, has got this aspirations, and we are thinking, you know, I really wanted to go and study medicine, or I wanted to go and do this, but my grades were not good enough. So now, or my family can't afford to send me to university. And because of that, they disqualify themselves from achieving and walking in their dreams, like you just described.
100%.
But if they can just elevate perspective and realize, but there's more than one way and one route to get to that point. What kind of other encouragement do you want to leave to some young people and those that's listening and watching? Say, listen, you know what? That elevating perspective can take you to, because remember, it's almost like if and I love this scenario, because elevate means I'm going up.
Yeah.
And if I'm at the bottom and I'm looking up, I'm only going to see, if I look up and I look around me, I can only see what I can based on where I am. But if I'm willing to go up, it means that I go onto a new level. If I look around me, I can see a little bit further. But it does mean that you need to be willing to take that step up.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if there's anything that you want
Yeah.
to share just around this elevate your perspective.
I mean, certainly, Marlon, specifically I'm going to use the example of I think just now with matrics
Yes.
or ex-matriculants being done with school and now having this responsibility to find jobs and basically find themselves. I think definitely they need to change their perspectives in terms of, for example, if they're wanting to apply for online degree, they have to change the way they think and the way they see it in order for them to be successful. And like you said, being up there, I mean, we can't be linear. You can't be doing the same things you have been doing if you're wanting to achieve much.
Yes.
So I think just putting in the equal amount of effort and keeping the heads up and looking at things in a different way so the actions can change. But definitely it's a two-way street for me. It's change your mindset, it will inevitably change your action.
Yeah. As one thinks, that's just how you are, right?
Exactly.
and also your perspective is sometimes determined by the people that you hang out with, right?
Yeah.
So your crowd, your
100%.
your circle determines your perspective. If everybody, someone once said that you become that which is the sum of the people that's around you. So if everybody around you are saying, you know what, you cannot go up, then after a while you're going to start telling me, no, I'm not allowed to go up.
Yeah.
Because that is the people that you are hanging out with, or that's your circle. Maybe some words of wisdom when it comes to just kind of being very cautious around who you spend most of your time with.
Yeah.
Because who you spend a lot of time with, that is who you become.
Yeah. 100%. I think I'm living in that. And even for like a young person, because I think it's easy to say it. Just to be honest, it's really easy to say, but I think when you're faced with reality and your circumstances, it does become a bit tricky. But I think again, it's a responsibility that you have to take. So and you do become who you spend time with. You start speaking like them, you start acting like them. So just the encouragement. If you want to be greater, hang out with great people, people that does great things. And don't need to be millionaires but at least you can positively see them contributing to society or to their own lives. If you're in the space of wanting to learn, be with people that's in college, be with people that's attaining their degrees, and because you're not going to be able to attain that with people that's not learning.
Yes.
I believe that you have to be with someone that's either more advanced or better. And not in a bad way. Like people sometimes in our society, they deem that as a bad thing, comparison. But if you really positively want to see a difference in your life, I think be bold and be fearless. Just be with people that's better than you.
And also the thing about perspective is, like you started right in the beginning, you said, you know what, that's what you see. And for many of us, we're so caught up with the things that is behind us that we struggle to look forward.
Yeah.
And if you can change your perspective, and sometimes for many people, it's really just, you know what, let me actually just walk in forgiveness. There's a lot of people that might have hurt us, a lot of people that, and now we're holding on to all of these things. And I like the analogy where, think of it, for all the hurts that you've experienced and trials and tribulations you've gone through, you're basically kind of putting a brick or a rock inside of a backpack.
Yeah.
And every time someone hurt you, you keep on carrying those rocks with you. So as you move, you carry this heavier rocks. But if you forgive someone, you can remove a rock out of the backpack. And if we can just get to a point where we're willing to remove some of these rocks, the things that has held us back, the things that has pulled us down, because that is again changing your perspective. Your elevation of perspective is really where you say, you know what, I know that what is before me is greater than that is what is behind me. But it does start with what you see and what you think.
Yeah.
And it's out of that opportunities exist. So for me, I think I'm very encouraged by some of the lessons that you've learned, and of course some of the experiences, especially going into with the work that we do in RLabs, going into different communities, and people have a certain perception and a certain perspective about communities. But as you said, that when you go into these communities, you realize, but there are so much possibility, so much potential. What has been one of your highlights in your travels over the last couple of weeks? Now, I do know that there was something that you mentioned to me that there's the one community that's just kind of it's got pulled on your heartstrings, that there's something about this community and the people, even though they might not seem like lots when you look in, but when you were there, it clearly gave you and taught you so much. Do you maybe just want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. I think I mentioned it before. It's definitely Marikana.
Yes.
But specifically a little community called Wonderkop.
Yes.
And I think, like for young people in that community, their futures are basically destined. Like you finish school and you go into the mining. And I think there's been a couple of young people that's actually broke that type of narrative, and I was really inspired. I think with RLabs and the method that we use, the bricolage concept, I think that was very evident in that community. And so there's a young guy and he's doing this Legends barber from like a little shanty house, but the inside of it's kitted out, it's so nice. And then another guy, I think he does a printing company, and this is in the heart of Wonderkop. Remember, there's no other possibilities. It's just you finish matric and then you go and study. Or not even study, you go straight into the mining. There's like opportunities waiting for you.
Yes.
The mining is waiting for you to come, basically.
Yes.
So I think it was nice and very inspirational to see these two young men breaking that narrative for their community, because it of course means they're changing perspective for others, for other young people that's now looking up to them. I still remember, like, it was the back of my hand. So I was very inspired.
I love that. The fact that they were willing to use what they had access to. And said, you know what, I'm not looking at what I don't have, but I'm changing my perspective to what I do have. And I'm going to use what I do have to create a new future and a brighter future.
100%.
And not only that, exactly what you're saying, what it also does, it changes what other people begin to see. Because now all of a sudden, another young person will say, wow, if you started a barber shop, maybe I can start a hairdresser, or I can start a car wash, and as you begin to change perspectives by what you do, and this is a very important lesson, I think, the fact that if you can change your perspective and you now act on that changed perspective, the next thing that happens is you now begin to have other people that sees the world differently, that can do things differently, and I absolutely love that. And I maybe just want to end off with one thing. I think one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about is this idea of gratitude. When you can walk your journey and you always can give thanks and have thankfulness, because gratitude does change your perspective, right? And I just wonder if there's maybe any final thoughts from your side.
I mean, thank you, Marlon. I think thank RLabs for the opportunities. I think, thank you for the leadership and just an opportunity to actually get to experience what I've just experienced. Being in those communities, I think even for them when I left, they're like, why are you saying thank you to us? I'm just like, you have no idea. So I agree with you about gratitude. And I think my journey at RLabs, again, people say, you're still so passionate. I'm like, it's because of the people that's my leadership. So I think today, and talking about perspective, just thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for investing in my life. And thank you for having me on this podcast.
Teri, thank you so much. So again, I think as you go, and hopefully those that were listening were inspired to take that step of faith and take that step of boldness, that they don't have to conform to the patterns of the world, but they can be transformed by the renewal of their mind. And by doing that, they can then elevate their perspective. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlon.